Let's talk a little bit about multi-platform phones. These phones, also known as MPP for short, are device types in the sense that we have a 6800 series phone portfolio, and we have a 78 and 8800 series that can be ordered as MPP phones. We also have the capability to migrate existing 78 and 8800 series that are running enterprise phone firmware to MPP firmware. So let's take a look at this in more detail. What are MPP phones? These phones are open SIP phones that can connect to platforms such as WebEx calling. They also can connect to Cisco BroadSoft platforms such as BroadCloud and BroadWorks, and it is really all of the interoperability testing that we have done with third-party systems that make these phones attractive from a historical standpoint. In fact, there is a long history behind MPP, as it is the successor to the end-of-sale SPA series that were used for over a decade in the SMB market and managed by service providers. If we put this into a broader historical context, around 2014, we came out with the 78 and 8800 series phones that could register to UC Manager and HCS. HCS is our cloud-based version of UC Manager that can be partner hosted. And then in 2015, we came out with the 78 and 8800 series for MPP, and these could register to approved third-party platforms. A couple of years later, we came out with the 6800 series, which is MPP firmware only. And of course, all of these MPP phones can register to WebEx calling, to BroadWorks and BroadCloud, as well as approved third-party platforms. So let's talk a little bit about the firmware migration process. You can migrate the 78 and 88 enterprise phone firmware to MPP phone firmware and vice versa. The costs are waived under an eligible flex plan. However, we do not support buying phones and then immediately migrating. That is not really the intent or the spirit of the migration process. The process itself is well documented on upgrade.cisco.com, and that would be my main recommendation is to visit this website. We also have some additional resources listed here, and you can take a look at this for more information. So the 78 and 8800 series, we're already familiar with those models. So let's take a look at the 6800 series in more detail. In the 6800 series portfolio, we first came out with three phones. The 6821 is a two-line phone, the 6841 is a four-line phone, and the 6851 is also a four-line phone. The 6841 is perfect for the home office in this age of remote work, since it doesn't require a PoE switch. It actually comes with the power supply, and it pretty much has the same feature set as the 6851. The 6851 has some additional features such as power over Ethernet, the ability to have a key expansion module, and all of the phones that we see here can support Cisco headsets. So we'll look at Cisco headsets in more detail later on in the session, but just note the 6821 and 41 can support the 530 series headset with the RJ9 port, and the 6851 in addition can support the 560 DECT headset through the use of the auxiliary port. Another four-line option that we have recently come out with for the home office is a Wi-Fi enabled phone, and this is the 6861. It easily connects to a wireless network, and you do not need a PoE switch. In addition, we've come out with the 6871, and this is the first 6800 series desk phone in the MPP portfolio that has a color screen. It also has 6 line keys. It has a USB-A port for headsets. It supports PoE, and it has a gigabit switch. We also have in the MPP portfolio a mobile handset. This is a DECT handset that is cloud only. You can actually see the 210 base station here. The base station would actually register to the cloud, and the handsets would connect to the base station. And that base station can be mounted in the ceiling. We actually have two different types of base stations. One is the multi-cell, and this allows you to basically connect multiple base stations together so that you can roam across an environment, and you can add more handsets up to 1,000. And then we have a single cell system, and as the name implies, you would have just 8 to 10 phone calls concurrently on a single base station, and that would be good, say, for a small retail office. And at the bottom of this page is a link to the DEC deployment guide. And to ensure a quick, easy, and effective installation, reading and understanding the deployment guide is an absolute must. Let's talk a little bit more about the single cell base station. There's also a repeater and a 6823 handset. The 6823 is a cost-effective handset that has a smaller and lower resolution display, but many of the same features as the 6825. The 6825 has an emergency button, Bluetooth 4.1, a high resolution display, and backlit keypad keys that the 6823 does not have. You will note the target availability is the second half of calendar year 2020, and like all future deliveries, the availability is subject to change. So to summarize all that we've talked about, we have a 78 and 8800 series phone that can run enterprise phone firmware, and these phones can register to CUCM, to HCS, which is partner hosted, as well as UCM Cloud that is Cisco hosted. And then we have the MPP firmware that can run on the 78 and 88 series phones. And we have the 6800 series that is MPP only, but the 78 and 88 can be migrated back and forth its firmware depending upon what platform you want to register your phone to. The MPP phones work with WebEx calling, BroadWorks, BroadCloud, and approved third-party SIP platforms. So this concludes the end of part 1. I would encourage you to check out part 2 where we talk about Cisco headsets. Thank you.